This time on Ride Rat Video, we're going to learn the Varial Heelflip. Let's get started. Welcome back to Ride Rat Video, a channel where you can learn new things about skateboarding, including tricks like the Varial Heelflip. You find me in my creepy basement. I had to film this so you can see my board in my lap. So this is the best thing I could come up with. Sorry if the audio is a little bit weird. But let's get into the Varial Heelflip. This trick is, to me, very, very picky. It'll do exactly what it wants to do, and you have to have everything, your balance, your foot position, everything just right, and then it's easy. Very interesting trick, but let's get started. So your front foot, I put right about here, not in the middle, not in the bolts, maybe somewhere in the middle, and then tipped ever so slightly backward like that. My back foot, I always put in this side, this corner of the tail right here. It's tempting, as if you have trouble getting the full spin or something like that, it might be tempting to move your foot in more and more like this. If you see someone do a big spin heel flip or a laser flip or something like that, you will see people putting their foot there. But for the normal Varial heel flip, that actually makes it tougher. You want to have your foot right there. And your balance. So something I'd always heard growing up when I was learning tricks and reading trick tips in Transworld and stuff like that was keep your weight centered. What does that mean? Centered around what? Well, what they meant was centered around the middle of the board. And if your feet are not on the bolts, then it's gonna feel like you're leaning forward. Your feet are like this, you're gonna feel like your weight is more over your front foot. So keep that in mind. Your weight should be over the middle of the board, more on your front foot, and then you're gonna try the trick. Before you get into the trick itself, it might help to do a little bit of practice with frontside shove-its. Not necessarily just making sure you do them, but being able to land them in the same spot you started, which is really, really hard. So something I did, because when I do tricks on this channel, when I teach tricks, I take tricks that I haven't done in a while and I relearn them. And that way, I'm getting a more fresh perspective on the trick. I've just recently troubleshot relearning it last week. So all this stuff is still fresh in my mind. And one thing that I did was I put my board down stationary and I tried to pop a frontside shove it and land the same spot I started and tried to land bolts. And that's really, really hard. That's almost impossible, unless you got super smooth ground. That's really, really hard. And it helps though, because getting the board out in front of you and spinning front side, normally the board wants to just fly backwards. And you don't want that. You don't want to be chasing the board in the air. You don't want to be pushing off and trying to catch up with it down there, because you're losing pop that way. You're not popping down and getting height, you're popping and jumping backward and you're losing some of the spin that way. So one thing that happens is you can put a lot more force into the trick than you think. If you're trying to jump backward with it, the board's not gonna get that high, it's not gonna flip that much, and you're gonna try really, really hard and not get much of anything. So something that might help is to try to do that for practice. But let's get into the trick. You want to pop the tail pretty hard. It doesn't feel to me much like a scoop. The way mine flip is more end over end than flat. If you do them flat, it's a lot harder to catch. You'll tend to land at 90, maybe a little bit past it. But to get the full thing around, in my case, I pop it more down, get the board to flip like that this way to a degree. So it's a pretty hard pop and a little front side shove direction. Not a scoop again, but just a pop and a push this way. Front foot, I don't really think about it too much. It feels to me like if the board doesn't flip right, it's not that I didn't flick hard enough, it's because the scoop wasn't right, or the pop. It wasn't straight enough, so it didn't run into my foot the right way. So if you can heel flip, you're good. It doesn't take that much with this one. I'm not a heel flip expert, I don't do them a lot. I don't like heel flips that much. But with this one, it's basically a plain heel flip. I do think about maybe opening up forward slightly as I do it, maybe flipping more off the nose than forward, but it's not much. It's not a big thing for me, but that might be something to experiment with if you have problems with it. So you popped the board pretty hard, you flipped it around, it's starting to go. One thing you may find at this point, at least what I find, is that with this foot having popped forward for the pop, and this foot flicked forward, I can't really see where the board is. The trick does want to float behind you slightly, and your feet are out in front of you. So it's harder to see this one actually go. And that is what makes this trick hard. It's not that it's hard to make the board do the thing. It's not necessarily that hard to stick with it. It's just hard to see it and commit to it. And how do you commit to a trick and trust that it's going to be there when you've never landed it yet? That's just how it is. That's skateboarding for you. So the board's going, it's flipping. You can't really see it that much. You just got to trust it and put your feet down. But the easiest way to make sure that you'll land it is to pull your feet up a lot higher than you think you have to. You might see the board starting to come around and you think it's good to catch it, but it'll be way too early. You've got to pull your feet up and just wait and wait and wait. For me, that's the biggest tip for this trick. You're not getting enough spin, jump higher, pull your feet up higher. Not getting enough flip, pull your feet up higher. One thing that happens a lot with this one is that it wants to get in the way. It's harder to, like I said, it doesn't flip flat. It flips more of an end over end type of motion. So it's very easy for your feet to get in the way, for it to run into your foot or something like that, or just brush against your shoe slightly and slow down. You might not notice in the moment. You might see that if you watch it. That's something else to do. Film yourself trying it and see what's going on. Like I said, I relearned these for the trick tips. I filmed myself doing it, and that's what was going on. The board was coming around. It would have flipped perfectly, but I was already giving up on the trick because it felt like it wasn't going to come around. And to pull those feet up, wait and wait and wait, and just hope that it works out, and then try to put it down. One thing about this one, I'll tend to catch it. The board's coming around, and I'll catch it on the tail like this, and then I gotta push it down and flatten it out. So I'm catching it with my knees bent and way up like this, but I'm not even that high off the ground. As you get better with them, I used to be at this point, I've been doing this trick for, like 12 years or something like that. I could always do them, but it's just been a while. So you can pop them and you can catch them flat, but a lot of times as you're learning, you'll be catching them more at an angle. And so your feet just have to be sucked up really high. And then you put it down. What's gonna happen a lot with this one is you're gonna land toes down, heels down, you're gonna land in a bad foot position. I'll land back on the tail a lot with this one. You'll land on the nose, you'll land on the tail because you can't see what you're doing and you're just kind of hoping for the best. You'll get used to it. Don't worry about it. You will get the feel for it. You'll know that the trick is gonna work based on how it glanced off your foot. The feeling of it coming around, you'll know if it's gonna work after a while. For now, you just gotta kind of blindly commit to it and hope for the best. It's the same thing with a lot of tricks like 360 flips. The board's flipping like crazy. You just slam your feet down and hope that it's there when you're done. Eventually you'll get to a point where you can do it higher. You can actually catch it early and you know for sure that it's done by the time you land it. But for the learning process, you just gotta throw yourself at it and hope for the best. Okay, so let's do some troubleshooting if this isn't working for you. Let's say that the board is not doing the flip. This trick has a weird tendency to make you look like you've never touched a skateboard before in your life. It happens to me sometimes. Pop the board, it gets to about 90, flips a quarter of the way, and then it just doesn't do anything. And there's two things that could be causing this. First is foot position not poppy enough. If it's too far on the side and too much of a scoop, it's not gonna wanna work. What happens is you pop the board, you start to scoop it, and then your front foot hits it and it just dies. It's not gonna glance off the side. You need it to be more of an angle to get a good heel flip off of it. If it's too flat, it's not gonna work. The other thing that might be happening is that you're catching it too soon or your feet are getting in the way where it would have done the flip, but it popped too quickly and you weren't pulled up out of the way yet and it's just kind of bouncing off your feet. You might not even feel it. It might just casually glance against your foot and stop. So those are things. Pop it harder, jump higher. That's gonna be 90% of your troubleshooting methods is to do that. Another thing that might happen is you'll land sideways. And this will happen sometimes. There's one that I popped it, flipped around, and I landed with the board completely sideways, feet like this, and I was able to jump and correct it. But that'll happen if you catch it too early, because as the board's coming around, it's gonna end the flip like this. You can catch it and push it down, and either spin too much, spin too little. It's the pop. It's all in the pop. If you popped it enough, you should be okay. You don't want to scoop it more. Again, that's going to cause more problems. Just pop it more, suck your feet up, wait for it to come around and hope. What's happening if it's not spinning enough sometimes is that you're flipping it too hard and you're catching it when it's done flipping but not done spinning yet. It's usually not that you're not spinning it hard enough. It's kind of weird like that. But One thing that helps a lot with this trick is to learn it stationary. And I don't normally recommend that you do that with a lot of tricks when you're this far into skateboarding. This isn't a super beginner trick. I wouldn't suggest doing most stuff stationary, but this one is dead easy stationary. It's strange. I can do this one stationary about 100% of the time. It takes nothing. You just pop it, you flip it, and it's done. But actually doing it rolling, staying with it, committing to it is a lot harder going forward. You might find it a little easier going fakie. In my case, not so much. It doesn't really work fakie for me that well. But one thing that might help you a lot is trying it switch. For a lot of people, front side and heel flip type stuff are a lot easier switch. And a front side heel flippy thing like a front side heel flip, big spin heel flip, varial heel flip, laser flip, whatever, that type of stuff works a lot easier switch. I can do them switch, not too bad, but the day I was filming, my normal stance ones were working a bit better, so I decided to stick with that one. But try it switch. You might find that it's a lot easier. For me, it's a lot easier to stay centered because I want to be on my normal popping foot, my front foot switch, and I stay with it a lot more and I flick it and it comes around. It works a lot better in certain ways, but definitely give that a try if you're having trouble. You can also try it rolling nollie. Do it that way too. That one works pretty well. So it can help to build some confidence with the trick before you do it normal tail forward, because that's one of the harder ways to do it, to stay with it and everything, because the board wants to travel more when you're off the tail than when you're off the nose. But anyway, hopefully that gets you in the ballpark of it and keep working on it. Don't forget to suck those feet up, give the board plenty of time to come around. I can't emphasize that enough, very important. And then hopefully you're landing it without too much trouble. With my new camera, I can film in slow-mo, so I got some 120 frame per second clips for you to check out, lots of different angles and stuff like that. Hopefully this is getting you on the right path to landing this trick, and good luck. Hopefully this works for you. I got lots of other trick tips on the channel. Most of them are very old, but I want to do some more. Hopefully as it gets a little bit cooler outside, it's been over 100 for most of the summer. Well, not most of the summer, but a lot. All the times when I would conveniently be able to skate happens to be unbearably hot. But I'm hopefully going to be doing some more trick tips in the near future. If you're just here for the trick tips, you might not know I do a lot of other stuff on the channel. I review skateboarding video games. I do all kinds of weird stuff related to skateboarding that you can check out. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of that in the future. And thank you for watching.